Hey everyone, how y'all doing tonight? Oh, y'all are good. Thank you for audience participation. Hey, thank you all for being here tonight. We really do value this. We value this ministry, obviously, and we value what this night could represent. And so no matter what stage of life or what season of relationship status that you are welcome here tonight. So no matter if you are single, if you are currently dating, if you're engaged, or if you're married, we believe that the gospel speaks to all seasons. Last year, I went into a pretty lengthy kind of like, here's why each season matters. And I thought tonight I would simplify that because I want to give, honestly, our awesome panelists, one of whom is the hottest thing I've ever seen in my life. I'm not talking about Meredith. Yeah, I'm talking about Brent Leatherwood. But here's what I do want to do real quick to set us up for tonight and to kind of get our gears thinking in this way. I thought I'd simplify it by saying this. When we talk about relationships and how to see those through a Christian lens and a Christian worldview, we tend to at times when it comes to, especially the dating part, right? Because like there's not that the Bible talks about when it comes to dating. It's a very new concept. So we tend to overcomplicate it. Almost kind of looking through the Bible as if it's like there are different pieces of the puzzle, and if we just kind of pick out the right pieces, we can all put it together, and then we'd all have the magic, right? But really, I think it's simple, and it's something that you already know, and most of us already know so much that if we just put into practice what we know, our lives would change. And a lot of us don't need to be taught something new. You just need to be reminded of it. And so the great commandment is this. Jesus said, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And then a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets. And so tonight, when we talk about, and here in a few minutes, we're going to get some kind of Q&A on the practicality side. But I wanted you to hear the heart first. That when we talk about single, dating, engaged, married, we can never depart from the great commandment, which is to love the Lord, to follow his laws, to honor him, to run to him, to cling to him, and then to love your neighbor as yourself. And if you start from that place, because I think there's a lot of anxiety around what it means to be a Christian in a world in a hookup culture and a ghosting culture. I think there's a lot of, how do we actually be Christians in the midst of this? But if you start with the nucleus of, I am called to love my brother, or I'm called to love my sister as I love myself. And really, James would tell us that if you say you love the Lord, but you don't love your neighbor, you actually don't love God. So let that then, the love that you would have for a potential spouse, the love that you would have as you are searching for a spouse, the love that you have for your spouse, that should be the primary motivator for everything that we do. So the way that we pursue somebody is out of love. The way that we abstain and the way that we draw boundary lines in sexuality, we do it in love. The way that we break up with somebody, we do it in love. Because on those two things hangs all the law, all the commandments. Now, that is pie in the sky, right? That's like, okay, I understand that. But here's the deal. If we hear tonight some really good wisdom from our panelist, and you don't do it with the right fuel, then really what we're trying to do is honestly legalism. But if we can channel the love that we have for our neighbor with good, godly wisdom and advice, then what the Bible would say is that we are flourishing in this life. And so that's really what we've got tonight, is to say, okay, do you love your neighbor? Do you love your potential spouse? Do you love, honestly, platonically, the men and women around you? Do you love your fiance? Do you love your spouse as Christ has loved you? Okay, if you do, then what does that mean for flourishing in this life now? And for that, we have three amazing panelists, and so I'm not going to continue to just talk up here because you all want to hear from them. So I'm going to ask for you all to come on up on the stage. And as we do, would you all go ahead and just give them a round of applause for being very vulnerable here tonight. So here's, if you've not been with us before in one of these, what we're going to do is we're going to throw up, Michael, will you go ahead and do that for me? We're going to go ahead and throw up a QR code. Who would have thought that QR codes were going to make a comeback? Thank you for that, 2020. And so we're going to throw up a QR code. That's going to send you to a link where you can ask questions of our panelists. And so I'm going to go ahead and ask that you all ask really good questions, right? Do that and bless other people, because if you're thinking it, probably somebody else is, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and move up this way. Michael, should I move this table out of the way? No? Okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and move up here. And as I settle in, we're going to start over here. And I'm going to allow our panelists to introduce themselves, and they're going to tell you just a little bit about their story and how they met.
So my name is Brent Leatherwood. I am a deacon here at Avenue South and served on the launch team. So I've been here since its inception. But without a doubt, the proudest title that I hold is I'm married to this young lady to my left. And we have been married coming up on 10 years. Three children are the product of those 10 years, and they have been 10 incredible years. And what else was I supposed to?
Or when?
Oh, I'm going to let her tell that. Yeah, but
Who are your favorite neighbors that you guys have?
so our favorite neighbors are actually these two. They live. We were there first.
You were there first.
So we like to think that we drew them to our neighborhood, but they live just a few doors down, and our church is big on establishing community. We love being in community with these neighbors. They are some of the best neighbors you could ever ask for, and so truly it has been a blessing from God himself that they are our neighbors.
Yeah.
And how we met, well, I'm Meredith. How we met is kind of fun because y'all know Aaron Bryant, obviously, pastor here. He had come to me and said, there's a guy that every time I'm with him, I think of you, and every time I'm with you, I think of him. I think y'all need to meet. And I was like, do not set me up on a blind date. I'm terrified of blind dates. Don't do it. So they did, and they didn't tell us they were setting us up on a blind date. So they invited us to go swimming at his parents' house. I was there in a swimsuit with no makeup, and they're like, you have 10 minutes before Brent Leatherwood arrives. I was like, thanks for giving me a 10 minutes heads up. And so anyway, long story short, we were engaged 6 months later from that night. So we call his parents' pool the magical waters of Bryant. Because there was something stirring in those waters that night.
It was the bathing suit.
Yeah.
It was definitely the bathing, yeah.
Well, it was the
Somehow
Lord.
we got past that.
It was the Lord's providence, but the bathing suit helped. Yeah.
We're going to be real tonight, you guys.
So,
So ask your honest questions.
but yeah, it was Memorial Day 2011, and we dated for 6 months. We were engaged for 3.
Very short engagement, 3 months. We knew we
Yep.
were ready. And
And then about 6 weeks into the marriage, our first child was on her way. So,
There you go.
yeah.
And how old were you two when you all married?
30.
30.
We were both
Okay.
30.
30 and 29.
Yep.
I was about to turn 30. Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
My name's Joy, and I am married to this man. And we met through a life group. Yeah, life groups, that's the way to go. And I was in my late 20s, and we dated, I think we dated for like a year and a half, if not almost 2 years. And then had like an 8-month engagement, and we've been married for 4 years. And we have a little boy.
And my name is Hunter, and I am clearly the luckiest man in the world to be married to this hot piece right here. So I'm just so grateful for her.
Hot piece.
So before we get started tonight, I do want to say, and just to reiterate, that anything that you hear tonight is meant to be birthed out of personal experience that we all have had. And so it's not meant to be, none of us are trained like psychologists or counselors. We don't have a license, and we're not licensed married and family therapists here tonight. We just wanted to say, man, we have lived a little bit of life as single people. Obviously, Brent and Meredith were in 30 and 29 when they were married, and Joy was 29 when we got married. I was 26, and so we just wanted to say, man, this is just our honest attempt at trying to help our church to think through a Christian lens, through a Christ-centered lens on these topics. So, I had questions like already prepared, but maybe we should just go ahead and jump to the live questions because they're coming in. So, do y'all want to go ahead and just do that? Don't look at them. I'll do that. I don't want you to psych yourself out. All right. So, let's do this.
Psych yourself out?
How many of you know? All right, so, and y'all can upvote questions that you see on there that you like a lot, that you want to do, or that you want to see. All right, so here we go. We'll answer this first one. And guys, this can be thrown out to anybody, so whoever takes it. And if another person wants to come and answer it, we can just kind of, all four want to answer, we can, or just two or whatever. Okay, so in a season of singleness, how do you balance being content in the season that the Lord has placed you in, while also praying that the Lord will bring you a spouse?
I'll take this one really quick. I remember being in a season before I met Brent when I wanted to love the Lord more than anything, but I fought constantly wanting marriage more than that. And so I was reading a book. Does anyone know who Elizabeth Elliot is?
Yeah.
I was reading one of her books, and she talked about when she was in college, she was in love with Jim Elliot. They were both called to be missionaries, and he did not feel called to marriage. And she was like, we are both called to the same thing. Why don't you see this? And she used to have to go to this stadium on the campus of her college, and she would write in her journal, God, help me to love you more than I love him. And I thought that was such a beautiful thing because we can't do it ourselves. Like, I had to ask the Lord, like, make my heart love you more and want you more. Because our heart wants what the world has.
Yeah.
Even the good things,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I love that. Help me to love him more.
And I would say, kind of as a way to preface probably any of the remarks that we would say, is our individual walks are not going to be your walk. Our individual stories as married couples won't be yours. And so I think we all need to make sure that we're giving one another grace. But that plays into something that Hunter was saying, which I think is true. Obviously, none of us are licensed therapists in this area, but there's multiple examples throughout Scripture where believers are learning from watching the experience of other believers. And so for this question in particular, I'm thinking through, when my early professional years, I was consumed with wanting to succeed at work, wanting to get ahead at work. To some extent, that's just the nature of the environment that I worked in. I've virtually worked in politics for most of my career. And I got a policy job on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. at 24 years old, becoming a senior advisor to a member of Congress. And I'm really not sure why they let me do that, looking back on it. But in that season, like, it very much became like I was consumed with just professional achievement. And I really didn't make a lot of room for wanting to pursue marriage or even thinking of a category of marriage. But it dawned on me after about 3 years in Washington, like, I could kind of feel the Spirit prompting me and letting me know, like, in the back of your mind, you do want to have a family someday and you want to have a wife. I'm not going to allow you to have that so long as you're staying in Washington. And ultimately, it was just kind of breaking it down to me that, like, oh, I've made an idol out of my professional pursuits. And I think God was using that to say, I really need you to get into a place where you're going to focus on me. And so I think, that's my story in just a sense, like, I wasn't even really thinking about marriage until I really felt this prompting from the Spirit to say, there's a lot more out there for you, and there is an abundant life that I will give you access to, but I'm going to need you to follow me.
Yeah, I like that obedience there. It's awesome.
I'll share on this as well because I think it's such a good, relatable question because I struggled with it a lot. It's like you want to be content where you are, and there's seasons of health and unhealth when you're wanting a family and you don't have that, and it's a good thing to want a family. And I just want you to know that when someday you are not single anymore, that longing for contentment doesn't necessarily go away because there are always things in our lives that you are waiting on the Lord for that you do not have. And so I think it's a practice in the posture that we have in taking our longings to God and saying, I don't know why you haven't fulfilled this longing, and I don't know why my life looks the way it does, or I don't have the things that I want, but I trust you. And the Bible says that God, He's close to those who mourn. And so if you're mourning your singleness or you're struggling, like a practice in taking that to God will serve you the rest of your life, because whether it's healing or finances or a child, there will be seasons of discontentment and waiting no matter what your life looks like. But know that it is hard. It's really tough, and like perfect contentment doesn't exist this side of heaven, but you can find peace, like they have said, and really leaning into your faith and saying like, God, you complete me. I don't need anybody else, but like I want somebody else.
Yeah. That was really good from all three of you, so I'm not going to add anything to it because I would mess it up. All right, thank you all. Let's move forward. This one got 5 upvotes, so we'll answer this one. What if your dating partner is not a Christian?
Well, I would flip that question around just a little bit and ask, from the perspective of your dating partner, do they see you as a Christian? Are you modeling what it is that you're hoping to see in your partner? And so if they see that you yourself are chasing after Christ, I would submit that ultimately if they're not being called by the Lord, then they're going to feel very uncomfortable in that dynamic, and some of this will be raised on its own. So honestly, my question would be right back to the person who asked that. And at the same time, also be willing to give a sense. I mean, look, if you are pursuing Christ, maybe the Lord has brought this person into your life so that He can use you as a vehicle to speak into that person's life and ultimately capture their heart.
Yeah. I'll go with this because Joy and I are in the throes of we have a new kid, and we were up this morning at 3:30. He had a fever, and so we're in the middle of this. Let me talk very candidly. The purpose of you dating somebody is for marriage. That's the only reason that you should be dating. Maybe in middle school you're dating somebody because that's just, I don't know, there's a person that you think is pretty, and you just are like, I guess I'll spend more time with you than other people. But at this stage of life, the purpose of you dating is for marriage. And in marriage, there are 100 different things that need to be almost automatic between you and your spouse. So Joy and I, when we had Judah, didn't have to think about, are we going to raise our child in the church? That wasn't even ever a conversation, because we knew, obviously, that is because our faith is the same. When it comes to tithing, right? We just know that that's a part of the way we spend our money. When it comes to relationships outside of the marriage, because we want to honor each other and have boundaries. Man, it was very easy to come to a consensus because our faith tells us that we need to be guarding, and because this is something that's sacred. So if you are dating someone who is not a believer, I'll be stronger maybe than I need to be to make a point. You are setting yourself up for an incredibly difficult life if you marry somebody who is not a believer, because your priorities will just be completely different in life. It will be like you're standing in the middle of something, pulling one way while the other person's pulling another way. And it's in the hard moments when you're up at 3:30 in the morning, or it's in the hard
I'm
moment.
not nice at 3:30, you guys. I'm not.
And it's in the hard moments where you're thinking to yourself, gosh, I feel like we need to continue to be sacrificial in our giving, but like money is like tight. That when your spouse is a believer, it's in those moments that syncretization of your marriage, of your faith combining, is almost like a superpower against Satan. Don't miss that by marrying someone, which is the point of dating, who's not a believer. That might have been a little hard. So to the person, if you're dating somebody who's not a Christian, I would say have a serious analyzation about the way that life would look with this person who is not on the same page with you as in their faith.
I'll just add one thing. One of my girlfriends asked me this recently, and I just asked her, I said, well, how important is your faith to you? That's a genuine question. And she said, well, you know, it's really important to me. And I said, well, in dating, you are trying to slowly combine two people's lives, and you want to share the same values. You're like, oh, you love family, I love family. Oh, you love this, even like about the basic things. So if your foundation of your life is so important to you, and they just don't get it, I mean, that's just it. You can look at it kind of from the 90-foot view that, yeah, you guys are just going to have a tough time being on the same page, and that might actually affect you negatively in your faith down the road.
Yeah. Okay, we'll move forward. Okay, maybe this one would be for Meredith and for Joy. Best way to figure out if a good Christian guy is just trying to be friends or more. Yeah.
10 years ago, I loved this topic. Because I called it at the time, I don't know what it's called now, backdoor dating. Guys who want to spend, is this what the question's about?
Yeah.
Guys who want to spend all their time with you, they want to like be BFF and like take emotionally, maybe they want to take physically, depending, but you're like not sure what you are. I hate it. And I hate it because God did not make women innately to be just friends with men. I'm not saying we can't be friends with people. Like I've got, men I work with, I'm friends with and stuff, but a woman is meant to be pursued and wanted, and a man is meant to pursue. And it gets real fuzzy when there's mixed messages sent. And I don't know if this is right or not. I'm just going to be honest. I just think you got to pull back. I had a guy that was pursuing me, wanting to spend all the time. He'd be like, I think about you when we're not together. I pray about us. And I'm like, what does this mean? But it never like went beyond that. He'd like want to hold my hand and pray. And I was like, are we dating? Or are we like, and so I quit answering the phone. And he showed up at my house one night and was like, you never call me back. And I'm like, I'm not looking for a bud. Like, I just don't want a bud. I have girlfriends are way better friends than a guy. Like, I love Brent, but he is not my BFF. Like, no, he's my BFF, but like, he doesn't
We're going to see some marriage counseling tonight up here.
You guys know what I mean. A girlfriend is way more like, Joey and I can talk about girl stuff way.
Who's going to go to Home Goods with you?
Not Brent. Joy is going to go to Home Goods with me. So, like, my point I'm trying to make is, I'm not saying, and I'm not going to, please don't quote me saying like, oh, she said they can't be friends. I just think it gets real confusing, and it lets lines become blurry, and it lets a woman feel, what am I missing? What am I missing that he wants? Yeah. It makes me feel less than, and I also think it lets a man not be a man. I'm like, pick up the frickin' phone and ask her to dinner and pay for it.
Come on.
And make
Sorry,
your intentions
that was
clear.
intense, but I feel real
And all the
strong
ladies
about
said,
that.
yeah,
Amen.
And don't text it.
Wow,
Call me.
Meredith, that was so good.
That was good, Meredith.
I think the only thing that I would add is like, it's okay to have an upfront conversation that is uncomfortable, because I think I'm always afraid of, well, what if he's not interested? And I'm like, what is this? And he's like, you think I'm into you? Like, that's what we're afraid of, right? That you misread the
You're
whole
holding
thing.
my hand and praying.
Right.
Like,
We're afraid that we've misread it, so you don't want to say anything because it could be really embarrassing. But honestly, it should be embarrassing for them if you ask if there's something and there's not. I would be like, well, then you're sending me mixed signals, and like I deserve to be pursued if you want to pursue me, and if not, I think that we need to like back off a little bit. And it's so hard to like have those conversations. I've had some of them like shaking, like over the phone, like trying to find the words, but like you have dignity and worth. And if someone, like Meredith said, isn't treating you that way, I think it's okay to ask. And like, if things are a little awkward for a little bit, that's okay. They're not your person. You don't need to waste your time. You know, you're like wasting energy thinking you'll be together and you probably won't.
Well, and let's go ahead and settle the question. Men, raise your hand. Do men do what they want to do? Like, I have so many girls that have come to me and been like, I can't tell. He doesn't call me. He'll wait 10 days to call me. He never has really asked me to dinner, but then like we split and I'm like, a man will do. Like, if he wants you to know he likes you, he'll do it. If he's not, then don't preempt that. Like, that's just, as a girl, my gut on it. You know what I mean?
Well, men set the tone, and you know, and that happens in any context in terms of relationship. And so, guys, really, this falls on us. If we are not setting the right example, if we are not actively pursuing them, things just get off kilter really quickly, and we send mixed signals. And I think you just saw, you know, with this, like our ladies, they just, you know, they process things differently than we do. And I think guys, the reason it's easy for us to kind of fall into this is like we're very good at compartmentalizing everything, and so we forget that if this is someone we're interested in, we need to be actively pursuing them and pursuing them in a godly fashion. Because otherwise, we're just going to end up falling short of the expectations that she has, and honestly, the expectations that we should have for ourselves as Christ followers.
Yeah. I'll end it with this, because I can only talk to the guys here, although I think the ladies were very well served by Meredith and Joy.
It wasn't too much.
No, it was good. Guys, if the question is in your mind, or if you think to yourself, gosh, I kind of wonder maybe there's something there on her end, have the conversation. Just say something first. Because what you are doing there, and I'm not saying women, I'm not saying that you can't send some signals that you might be interested, but you shouldn't have to be doing that for a prolonged amount of time. Guys, step up. Ask a woman out. And in a way that is not weird, and you don't have to date her one time and then you're married, right? Like, that's not how this works. I think as Christians, we're like, if I ask this girl out, then the next logical step is marriage and then kids. And I don't know, maybe I want 2 kids and she wants 3.
Well,
how could it work?
And to be fair to the men, there are some women can get that crazy on a first date. Like,
Sure.
if you watch The Bachelor, I'm like, what is wrong with these women? Like,
It's not real life.
they say they say stuff that a man would go running for the hills.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Yeah.
But I also want to add that it's even talk to that woman, even if you don't want to date her, but you think she might be interested. Like, it might hurt in the moment, but ultimately we'll feel respected if you kindly are like, is there something here? Because I want you to know that, like, I just want to be friends and I really respect you. We will feel so much more respected than if it just like goes unknown and you like slowly stop talking to us. That's like a real.
Well, and isn't that the thing? Like, these girls, they have so many examples of boys that are out there. And what we're talking about is acting like a man.
Yeah.
And that will truly set you apart if you pursue her and honor her in the way that she deserves to be honored. I mean, Aaron always talks in this category, but I love it because it's a helpful reminder, especially because 2 of our children are daughters. Treat her like a princess who is an heir to the kingdom, because she is. And so when you don't give her that dignity and that honor and that worth that she is due, man, it's going to lead to misinterpretation. It's going to lead to hurt feelings, and ultimately, it's going to prove that you're just a boy and you're not yet a man, and it's not worth her time.
Yeah. Okay, you can't say that we weren't upfront and honest with you guys tonight. All right. Okay, all right, let's move on. This one is heavier, and so if we need to take a beat, and then, of course, I can speak into this from pastoral side. So what are some helpful tips if your significant other tells you that they struggle with a porn addiction? Now, this is big, and I want to address this first off by saying to the people who are watching, and maybe you even are, because this is being recorded, maybe you're watching this later, and that's the situation that you have found yourself in. and your significant other has told you that, you need to know that, like, it's okay that you're hurt and that it is betrayal, even if it's not with a physical person. That is real betrayal. And so if you are hurt here tonight, or if you are doing that, and honestly, guys or ladies, because porn is something that affects women and men, if that's something that you are engaging in, and your spouse or your who you're dating or your fiance, they don't know that, you haven't disclosed that to them, you need to tell them, because they need to know that you are not honoring what you have said you were going to honor. So, so for that question, your significant other tells you that they have a porn addiction. Maybe let's put this in context of let's triage this. What do they need to do first? What's the second thing they need to do third, if that's helpful?
Yeah, well, I mean, I want to, if the person who asked this question is actively dealing with this, I want to affirm you for being bothered by this, because we should be clear. This is cheating. This is adultery. This is something that you should feel hurt by, because it is a violation of, you know, whatever relationship status you have, dating, engaged, marriage. It's a violation of that. There's another party that is being invited into that relationship without your consent. And obviously, we know in the Christian context, we would never want that. And, you know, I would say the person who is struggling with that, remember my first comments where I was telling you I was kind of idolizing, you know, professional achievement? Well, this is a different kind of idol. Only this isn't an idol, you know, at first glance it might be, oh, you're idolizing pictures of someone online. Actually, no, it's an idolization of self-gratification. You're making an idol about yourself when you look at porn. And so the person who asked this question, again, if it's an active situation, you're right to feel harmed by this and hurt by it. As far as triage, I mean, you need to be very open and honest and direct. Don't beat around the bush with this. It needs to be confronted. It is a sin in the midst of the relationship that is occurring. And so those open lines of communication, they need to be relied on in this, because it does need to be, an end needs to come to this. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
I think it's okay to say what you will and won't accept while giving grace and love. And I also think it's really helpful to encourage your partner to find community that can help with that. I have friends who their husbands go to like a weekly group to help with a porn addiction, or they have accountability partners that they talk to weekly, and like encourage them, because this is like a real struggle, and it's not without help or redemption. So it's totally possible.
Well, and it's a very hard question, but, and this kind of goes back to what you had stated earlier when someone had asked about dating a non-believer. Early in our dating relationship, this actually came up. We broached this subject just because I think we kind of both wanted to know what we were dealing with, and we took that moment to define it as what it is, which is adultery. And we both agreed moving forward that when we were married, porn would be considered cheating, as if you were cheating with a person, because God did not intend a man or a woman to watch that or look at that. There is only one holy avenue for sex, and it's within marriage. And so, what was my whole point of saying this? And I think it's, when you talk of dating a non-believer, this is a really big issue that would come into play, of saying, like, where do your guys' values match up? One of the conversations is a very real conversation we had together when we were dating. As I said, no one's forcing us to get married. No one's holding the gun to our heads. We don't have to get married. We don't have to be in a covenant before God. We can both continue to be single. We can continue to date other people, live with other people, you know. But if we're choosing this, let's choose that. We both agreed, let's choose to honor each other in that. And that's not to say that there's not struggle. That's not to say that a person who's an alcoholic can't get married because they can't struggle with alcohol or a person who struggles with porn. But as a woman, I would say that that person, whether it's a man or a woman, needs to get help.
Yeah.
I think Michael Christian is someone
Yeah.
that runs a practice here. He's incredible. I've heard him speak several times because that is going to come up in marriage. It's not going to go away. Like having sex is not going to make porn addiction go away.
Yeah.
And so it's something that I think needs professional help.
Yeah.
And Michael Christian, he's a part of the Building Blocks of Marriage classes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
He's
So
incredible.
He is.
I love to hear him speak because he just, he's just really wise.
Can we, or did you have something else? I wanted to pivot slightly from this to talk to the men in the room.
Go ahead.
So, guys, I mean, the reality is it is affecting more and more in our society, women, but we know this is especially something that can ensnare us. And let me just speak, the downstream effects of a porn addiction, the desensitization, what is the word? Desensitization that comes from a porn addiction in your sex life. I mean, you don't want to be messing with this because sex in the midst of a marriage relationship is incredible. It is freeing to be able to share that intimacy in the context of a marriage relationship. Y'all, it is incredible. What you are doing with porn just completely cheapens that experience. And I would say long term will ultimately rob you of part of the joy of sex in a marriage covenant. So, I can't talk about this enough, and there's a resource on it that just came out. I'm going to completely forget the name, but Pastor Ray Ortland just came out with a book on porn and combating porn addiction. It is an incredible book. Dr. Ortland is just an amazing theologian, but he gives very practical, and he hits his head on about why this is so destructive, not only for you as a person, not only for future relationships, for future marriage, but ultimately your walk with Christ. And so I couldn't commend that to you highly enough.
The book is called The Death of Porn.
Yes.
Men of Integrity Building a World of Nobility. So, okay. I'll say this in bullet point form. Someone comes to you, what are the things that you're supposed to, what are the things that need to happen? Number one, the internet goes off of devices that are not, that do not have hardcore safety blocks on them. Meaning like you use the terrible internet browser that all those apps have, like Covenant Eyes and things like that. That's it. Number two, getting into a counselor immediately. And number three, for the first few weeks, it is a triage of you as the person who is offended need to be able to ask questions openly and honestly of the person who is the offender. You can't live like that forever. Eventually, you have to move beyond that hurt and have forgiveness. But it is a grief, and you need to get help. And so that help is here at the church. We have resources for that, and so we would offer that to you. So, okay, let's move on because we have a lot of good questions. Okay, this one's a little bit lighter. What questions? Yeah, well, maybe a little bit faster. But what questions should you be asking a date in the first couple weeks of a relationship? Maybe what questions should you not ask? I don't know if that's a thing. How many grandchildren do you want ideally, right? Maybe not. Don't ask that. I would say.
How many kids do you want to have? Right? That's something right on the first day you should not ask.
Yeah, not ask. Okay, while you guys think, hey, tell me about your faith story. Like, what's your interaction with Jesus like? Man, tell me about your parents. How did do you have a good relationship? You love your relationship with your parents. What are your hopes for life? I'll tell you this, man. If somebody wants to move to Nigeria to do missions and you have zero desire to ever leave Nashville, Tennessee, you should not marry that person, right? Like, just don't try to force it. That is a good question to ask. Man, what are you hoping to do in life? Are you compatible in that? So those would be some questions I would throw out.
I mean, to keep it lighter, are you a dog or a cat person?
Yes.
I think.
Coffee or tea.
That's a deal breaker right there,
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll keep going. All right.
Don't be weird.
Don't be, yeah.
I mean, don't be weird. I mean, this gets back to the guys. Like, but pursue her in an honorable way, and don't get into like weird conversations.
Yeah. Which includes, tell me about your past relationship and why it failed, right? Like, don't do
Yeah.
that.
That's much later.
Yes, much later.
Watch the way he treats the waiter or waitress. I feel like you can tell a lot about a man by whether they're kind to people around them.
Yeah. Okay. Next question. Does God want us to wait for him to present the right one in life, or actively pursue those who we feel would be good partners and hope we find the right one? Does everybody, that's one person asking a question. Is that a tension that people struggle with? Okay, yeah.
I did.
Yeah. Do I take a posture of, maybe what we could say is this, do I take a posture of like a passive, and I don't mean passive like that you're being passive, but that you're being on the receiving end of it, so you're kind of waiting for that to come, or an active posture kind of deal?
Can I say both? Is that possible? That there are seasons of stepping back and seasons of, I think it's okay to be like, I really think this person's awesome. Or I feel really healthy and really ready, and I'm going to get on an app and I'm going to try to meet somebody, because I think it's knowing yourself and what's going on, because there were seasons where I didn't feel the healthiest, or I felt like, I deal with like depression and anxiety. That's a part of my story where I might need to like get healthier there, or I've been hurt from a relationship, or a season where I need to focus more on job or family or whatever. But also, if there's somebody in your life that you think is awesome, I don't think you're like, all right, God, just gonna wait until they come to my house with flowers. I think it's okay to be like, let's hang out. I don't know, let's see. I don't know if I worded that very well, but I think you can do both in different ways.
Do you remember, and this is kind of part of our story, do you remember you had walked through a tough season before you and I had met? Mm-hmm. And we had the conversation that if you and I had met maybe 3 or 4 months earlier, mm-hmm. like it would not have worked out, because you were just in a really tough season, and I was actually dating someone different. And so like it would not have met. I mean, it wouldn't have worked, right? Glad that relationship did not work out. But my point is that it came to God's timing of like Joy and I had been in New York City for 4 months before I met Joy. And Joy had been in a season of really hard, since she's already mentioned it, had been through a hard season of depression and anxiety. And so when we met in September of 2014, there were things that we could not have orchestrated on our own. Yet, so that's why I like you when you said the both and kind of deal. Yet, it also took me initiating for something to happen. So it is a both and.
Yeah, we were friends for like 4 months and nothing happened. And I was kind of like, well, he's not interested, but I'm still going to like take every chance to talk to him and hang out with him. And I don't know, something changed. So you just never know.
Before we met, you weren't being passive, but you had just kind of said, I am done with dating, right?
People used to tell me I'd never meet someone because I didn't put myself in a lot of situations that I would go to Barnes & Noble on a Friday night and read with the 80-year-old people. I love old people. And so I just was like, Lord, if you want to bring someone, you'll bring someone.
And now what do we do on our dates?
And now that is where we go on our dates.
We go to Barnes & Noble and
so
read.
the Lord knew what he was doing. God... I can only speak to my story, and I'll try and make this real quick, but the Lord, every other relationship I was in, and I was in some long ones, and I was in some unhealthy ones, the Lord was like, no, no, no. And I was like, justify, maybe, And I feel like the Lord was like, I'm trying to tell you no. And when I met Brent, I was in a very healthy place with the Lord, and I said, Lord, do not put someone in front of me, because me and you were good. Like, I'm going to be single, me and you were good, but he's kind of cute, and I kind of like him, so, like, don't put him in my vision. And every time I tried to throw up a red flag, there was no red flags. And so for me, the Lord truly was faithful to the promise of, like, Meredith, you can try in your own effort, and you will have an Ishmael, or you can wait and you can have an Isaac.
Wow.
And both of those would have meant marriage, but they would have been 2 different marriage relationships. And so,
That's good.
yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful.
And God is with you in both of those.
Yeah.
So I'm not to say like, oh, you made the wrong decision. Sorry, you're on your own. But there's a different,
Yeah, it's a different heart out of which
Yeah.
it started. Yeah. Okay. All right. So next question. And I think a lot of people do struggle with this. What if you find someone right for you personality-wise? So y'all clicking personality, vibing on the same jokes, all that kind of stuff. And they have the right Christian values. So we're good there. We've had the discussion. Faith-wise, we're on the same level. But you aren't very attracted to them. Okay? How does that matter? How should we, and there's a few questions, honestly, about that. How do we think through, I feel like this person hits a lot of the boxes that I want in a spouse, but the attraction level is just not there.
that makes me think of Seinfeld when George went on the date with the woman with the toe. Like her toe was just, and he loved everything about her, but he was like, her second toe is longer. Anyway, that's what I thought about when you said that.
Yeah.
This made me laugh because my mom has like the funniest saying, and I will never forget. She always was like, you got to wake up and look at that face every day. So can you look at that face every day? And it seems so rude, but at the same time, I think that it's an okay gauge to be like, do I find this person unattractive, like I'm literally unattracted to them, like a repelling, or are they just not my type? I mean, everybody has a type.
It's like if they touch you and you. Just kidding.
You're like, oh gosh. No, but then there's also like a type. And when I first met Hunter, he wasn't the typical type of guy that I had always dated. He didn't look exactly like this like architect kind of guy that I was into, but I was attracted to him. He was just different, and I was like, oh yeah, maybe. And then I fell in love with who he was. So I think if you're attracted to their personality and everything else about them, that like give it a shot. I didn't explain that well at all. People look shocked and horrified.
What does a typical architect
Brent's like,
look
what?
like?
I was trying to say archetype, I think.
You
I was trying
definitely-
to say archetype.
You said architect.
I did.
Yeah.
I did date one architect.
I'm
but
not
it
an
wasn't.
architect.
I was trying to think of what an architect looks like.
I'm having new revelations of our marriage here tonight.
Oh my gosh. Baby. You're my type now, always.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would. You can't dismiss the physical attraction element like that. I mean, ultimately, is that the most important thing? No, but I mean, Joy, you're absolutely right. There's something to that, and I think God uses that to draw us to the person.
There's got to be a chemistry. And I don't even know how to define chemistry. It's just there or it's not there. And you probably know who you've had it with and who you haven't had it with.
Yeah.
I'd say after you're married, that's way less important. But I think it's very important before you're married of finding the right one. Because after you're married, I mean, sex is going to be 1% of your whole relationship. And I don't mean that in you're not going to have sex much. I just mean like in the grand scheme of marriage and life. And that's a very important part of your marriage, but it's a small part of your marriage, you know?
Yeah,
And so-
absolutely. Yeah, I would agree with
I
that.
think it's never a bad idea to go out a couple of times and see if you're more drawn to each other or not. I think you guys will know.
Yep. Okay.
Buy him some cologne. I don't know. Try something. Try something.
Okay. All right, we talked about this question a little bit, so we'll get back to that if we have time. Okay, advice on getting over the fear of rejection. Yeah.
Like in asking someone out? Like the fear of asking? Is that?
Yeah, or the fear of I put myself out there, I'm asking, and then that person is not reciprocating, or maybe I've indicated that I'm interested in them, and they're not reciprocating an interest in me. How do we get over the fear of that? I'll go to give them some time to think. This is going to sound so much like what you would expect a minister to say, so like forgive me of this. If you are not grounded and secure in who you are in Jesus, that fear of rejection will multiply itself out over every facet of your life, right? And so oftentimes we think we are who the person that we are most closely associated with, or the people we're most closely associated with, we think we are who they think we are. Meaning our perception of them, or our perception of ourselves, is being reflected back to us by someone else. And so Commit right now that the most true words said about you will never be said by a member of the opposite sex. It will be said by the Lord. And he has defined your worth, and he has defined who you are, and he has told you that you are his beloved, that you are his child, that you are safe and you are secure. And I know everybody's like, gag me with a pitchfork, right? Like, it's so cheesy, right? Because it's like, okay, well, what does it matter if somebody is like a child of God is not loving me, or is not reciprocating? I get that. I think that's where you have a community of people around you who will tell you, man, that's not who you are. The rejection that is coming is not, because we very rarely think rightly about ourselves. I will always think either too highly of myself or too lowly of myself. I need a community of, honestly, guys around me, women, you need women around you to remind you that you are not somebody else's point of view, that you are the Lord's. So that is cheesy and is probably not going to be super helpful to the person that asked the question, but honestly, I don't know how else to get there.
Well, I would say too, like if there's something that you're insecure, everyone's insecure about certain things about them. Before I met Brent, when I was single, I was like, well, why would a man like me? I'm this way or I'm this way. You think of all the reasons in your head, like why a person wouldn't want to be with you. And you got to remember when you ask the Lord to put together a divine love story, no one knows you like he knows you. He's your creator. If you ask him to do that, you will be shocked when you meet that person, the things you answer in him and he answers in you. When Brent was in D.C., all the women in D.C. kind of wanted to live the Sex and the City life, go out on the town every night, and that really wore him down because he was like, this is not what I'm looking for. And then he meets me, and I'm like, let's go to Barnes & Noble. And he would be like, but we answer, and that's a very surface example, but you answer when you meet that person, the things you were insecure about or the things that you might think, no one's ever going to want that, or you will find that God can craft together something that you're like, I love that about you. It's one of my favorite things about you, And so you can be fully confident that your creator knows,
Yeah, that's good.
what that is.
He knows, yeah.
In our modern times, I think we have, in many ways, minimized the reality of spiritual warfare. And to borrow something that Hunter was saying before, the purpose of dating is ultimately to get to a place where marriage is your reality. And I think we shouldn't miss the fact that, look, spiritual warfare, we're wrestling with the powers of principalities of this world in all these different contexts. And I think maybe in some ways we think, oh, well, my dating life, my married life is like, free from that. No. The enemy wants to cause you to doubt yourself, wants to put all sorts of snares in front of you, traps in front of you. And this in particular could be something that the enemy is using against you, and you shouldn't miss that. And I think part of the solution here is to continually put things before the Lord in prayer, and we should be doing that in all aspects of our life, but especially about this, and especially if there is someone that we're interested in, or some decision that we're wrestling with around a person, like. This is a very important decision you are making in your life. Of course, the enemy would try and thwart that. And so don't miss that.
Yeah.
Real quick, my superficial answer is it worth it? Because I know that Hunter was nervous about asking me out because we're in the same life group. Like, what if I say no? And when I started going out with him, I was like, well, what if we break up, or what if we don't like each other? Then I can't go to this life group, and I really like this life group. But it was worth it. I was like, but what if he's my person? Like, let's try and see. I'm glad that he asked, even though I could have totally rejected him. And yeah, I just, if it's worth it to you, then it's worth the rejection.
That's great. Yeah, that's awesome. It was. And it was worth it, and I'm so grateful, because here we are now.
One of my girlfriends said to me when we started dating a little while longer, you have to marry him, or you got to leave that group. And I was like, oh, no. So I married him. I really loved the group. I loved it. I'm still in it.
Life group and then marriage is clearly where she was. In a world with dating apps, how should we as Christians go about being on them? Fun fact, I'll let you into the back, like to maybe the inner part of my story. I don't even know if you know this. When I was single, there was all of a sudden, and bear with me, this app had not yet gained a reputation for being a place where people who were not serious about Christianity and Jesus dating was not a thing. So I was on Tinder for about 10 minutes until I realized what was happening. And I don't even remember this was like 2013 or something like that. And I didn't even, man, I put like a Christian quote by like an early church father, like Christians are fearless. And then like I started swiping through like the other profiles and I realized, oh, I don't need to be on this. I probably should not be, this is not my scene. So anyway, I just say all that to say, I didn't spend a lot of time on dating apps because I literally got off it right then. But what I would say is this. Number one, I don't think that in a world of digital connection that a dating app has the stigma that people want to make it out to be. When it comes to, people are like, I need to tell my story. Like, we'll make up a story about how we met, but really we met on Hinge. I've performed probably 2 out of the 3 past weddings that I've done have been people who have met on Hinge. And they are God-glorifying people. With dating apps, what you have to do is you have to put them in their place. You have unlimited access to people, and you can start to see them as just a 2D kind of picture. You have to, number one, be truthful about who you are and represent yourself fairly, meaning this, that you wisely put out information for a watching world. You put out pictures that are not meant to draw the type of person that you would not want to meet in real life. And you are honest in conversations, and you are honest about your desires and your hopes and your dreams for a partner when you connect with somebody online. It's just like you would give any advice to somebody who's dating face-to-face. You just happen to meet online. But do not misrepresent yourself thinking that might get you a better chance to meet somebody. Be exactly honest about who you are and what you are looking for, and don't let the medium change the way that you interact with the person.
I said I loved horseback riding on mine, and I've been twice. I don't even like it, but I thought it would be cool, so I put it on my profile.
Long walks on the beach, right? Whatever.
I would say that treat people with the same dignity that you would want to be treated with. It's tough when people are used to popping in and out, and like you start a conversation with somebody and then they're gone and you were invested and they just never get back. Like that happens all the time, and vice versa. But if it would hurt your feelings if you'd been messaging someone as long as you're messaging, what?
Sorry, somebody asked a stupid question.
Oh.
It's got
no.
8 upvotes.
Great question.
Wow.
They might.
Can I see them?
Yeah, they may or may not have ended up at a life group Christmas party in a photo frame that Kyle Gagne has.
Oh
so
my
you can
word.
See this.
Well, anyways, just if someone's messaging you, and give them the same dignity and response that you would want.
Yeah. Okay. We have just a few more minutes, and in just about 5 minutes, we're going to break off into kind of smaller groups throughout this room, and we're going to do like an active reflection. Man, what are some takeaways? What are some things that that maybe are helpful? And honestly, what are some things that you want to have follow-up discussion with? So we're going to do that in about 5 minutes. So be prepared for that. We're going to get to just a couple more questions. There's a lot on the physical attraction thing. So that's obviously, I'm glad we touched on that question. Okay. This one for, I think in particular for married couples, how do you begin to set boundaries between your parents and your relationship as you get married? I will say this is something, my parents live in Hendersonville and in Jolton. And so my dad and my mom are divorced. My dad and stepmom are in Jolton. My mom and stepdad are in Hendersonville. And we have struggled with this. And so, I don't know, Joy, do you have anything on that?
Not yet. Do you guys want to?
Well, I mean, I'm like Hunter. I come from, my parents divorced, and, I love my mom. She has, in many ways, molded me into the man that I am. But I would say when we were first married, particularly the night of our wedding, we were we were just, wondering, like, man, is mom going to be able to get over, like, losing her only son?
She came to the bridal suite that morning and was like, just so you know, he will never love you the way he loves me. And I was like,
She said that to you?
and I said, because I felt all confident, my friends were there. I was like, I'm sleeping with him tonight.
Brent knew it was coming.
And that ended the conversation.
That is one way to build a boundary, I guess. Okay.
Listen,
All right. Let me give you this, something that we've just discovered. Don't ever let your parents come between you and your spouse. My mom came to Joy one time and she said, "Can I tell you something?" And you cannot tell Hunter.
No, she didn't ask. She just prefaced it with that.
Oh, okay.
So then you're like, ugh. And you want to have a good relationship with your in-laws. So sometimes early on things happen, and then in retrospect, you're like, oh, that wasn't good. Or like, oh, that conversation totally went away. I didn't want it to go, and I should have set a boundary. But they're older than me, and they're family, and I love them, and I don't have like a deep relationship with them. So we figured out a lot of stuff after I think things
Well,
have
and
happened.
we're still called, even in the context of a marriage, we're still called to honor our mother and father. And at the same time, setting boundaries. I can't even remember what it was, but her parents were making her feel bad about something with our kids or whatnot. And I basically pulled them aside and told them, "You're not going to talk to my wife that way."
he totally took up for me. I was so proud. Like, my mom can be real dominant. I know that's shocking with my person. She's mother incarnate. She's amazing. She's a better mother than I could ever wish to be. And when she comes, she's like so on it with my kids. But it started to make me feel like I would tell my kids it's time to go to bed. They would cry. My mom would be like, "Just let them come in and snuggle with me." And I'm like, "Mom, they have to respect our authority. You can't intervene." And he stood up to my mom and he said, "You make Meredith feel like she's not a good mother when you do that. Like, you need to respect that." And I was like, all proud of Brent.
But I mean, she took it. I mean, I did it in a way that honored her.
It was kind.
Yeah, but I mean, it very clearly set down a marker that's like, hey, in our home, with our children, our rules are going to be the ones that apply, not something that maybe you did with them growing up or whatever, just because you're a grandparent. You want to, do mama's privilege with your grandkids. In here, we're trying to help shape them and mold them and train them up in a way, and so please don't undermine us. And she took it well. And so again, it comes back to sometimes you just have to be direct.
Yeah. I'd say this, man. For your entire life, your number one relationship, probably from an authority perspective, has been your parents. And so it is difficult for your parents to see you as not just their little kid anymore. And so when you get married, having that conversation earlier rather than later. I remember we were at my cousin's house for a Thanksgiving deal, and my dad and stepmom wanted for us, Joy and I, to come back to their house after that was done. We were like an hour and a half away from our home. And I literally looked at Dad, and I said, "Dad, we're not going back to your house." And he was a little offended. But I didn't have to put Joy in the awkward position of looking at her and being like, "Babe, can we go to this?" And making
And
her
then me being like, nope. And then I'm the bad guy.
making her the bad guy. I was that to my parents. And so when you get married, you are the gatekeeper for your parents. Now, there are exceptions where Brent, pulled aside, stepped in for his wife. But what I'm saying is don't make your spouse be the bad guy. Don't make them always be the one that's saying no. You say no sometimes. And then never make plans with your family that does not include your spouse.
Yeah, I think it's best to handle your own parent. You know what I mean?
As a normative
Yeah,
rule.
we went to Disney World. We left our son with my mother-in-law. She chose to take him for his first haircut.
Oh.
And then sent us the picture while we were getting on the Dumbo ride. And his hair was cut like Dumb and Dumber. It was like straight up. And I literally had to breathe, and I just handed the phone to my husband, and I said, "I need you to deal with your mother." Because I was like, I can't.
As a normative rule, you deal with
I don't want to,
Yeah. Okay, well, y'all, that was great. tell you what, we're going to end this portion of it by going down the row here. If you were to talk to these lovely people one-on-one, what would be one kind of blessing? What would be one kind of like thought that you would leave them as we depart here tonight? So, go, Joy.
Okay. Okay, two things. I would say that it's okay to be bold. I think find your security in your quiet moments with God, and when you struggle with insecurity, because you will, and I still do, and I always did, to say, God, tell me what you think about me. Remind me what you think about me. Show me that you love me. Show me that I am chosen and complete and significant, because those are all the things that singleness lies to you about and that you struggle with, and know that in those seasons when you struggle, it's okay. And then just ask him for boldness to like be okay with being rejected or trying something new, if it's a dating app or going on a blind date or having that hard conversation. And then in a world of ghosting, just like be above it. Treat someone like they are made in the image of God, even if they have not been that kind to you. And I had really awkward conversations with dudes that were uncomfortable, being like, I'm sorry, I don't think that this is best for us. Like, the breakup conversations are awkward and hard, but you know how awful it is when you get texted a breakup text or when you are ghosted by somebody. And so just don't treat people that way, even if you have to have a really hard conversation. A dude broke up with me over text once, and I was like, it was the worst timing ever. 3 months, and I just literally was like, you're calling me tomorrow at noon. I'll talk to you then. And I was like, he might not call. And I like cried all evening, and the next day I was by my phone just like, and he called. And I like, it wasn't that much closure, but I felt like I honored myself, that I was like, you will not treat me like this. And on the phone, I was like, don't break up with girls over text message. It's really rude. So, just stand up for yourself.
There you go.
I just want to say, I want to speak to anyone who's single. I was single 10 years ago, and I remember it feeling bleak then. And I think it's only progressively, with our culture being digital, going through a pandemic, being more isolated, I want to just remind and encourage everyone that God is living and he is active. And he can move, and the horizon can look like nobody is on it. And he can call into being, because he cares about marriage and the covenant of marriage. He will always sustain marriage and the family in this world. And God does not promise us marriage in Scripture. That's not a promise that's given. But it is a holy avenue that he created. And if you pray and you put that before him and say, Lord, I want your story, I believe he can bring it and breathe it into being. I had that happen in my life, and I can speak from that testimony. And so one of the verses that I love, it's in Revelation, it's in chapter 3, verse 7, and it says, what he opens, no one can close, and what he closes, no one can open. And when it is right, you cannot mess it up. And when it's wrong, you can't force it. And so God is so powerful, and he can call that to be. And so I'm passionate about people praying for their spouse, not in a weird way of like, but just believing that God can do it, and believing that he desires us to live lives that are holy. That is a very real thing to want. It is a very good desire to want that. Yeah. And it honors him. And so, yeah.
When Hunter said, at the close, just try and offer a few words, I was thinking like, what actual words would I try and highlight? And I feel like we've touched on grace. We live in a society without grace. There needs to be more grace extended, and particularly in a season where you're either dating, you're engaged, or certainly in marriage. It also needs to be pursued and done with purpose. So grace, purpose, and men, I'm particularly putting this on you. Be purposeful in your pursuit of women, and do so in a God-honoring way. And then probably the last word I would put forth is holiness. And I would say it like this: marriage, as beautiful, as amazing as it is for us individually and together, marriage is actually not about us. It's not about you. It's not about your wife. It's not about your husband. It is about Christ. And if you pursue him in the context of your marriage, that is actually where you will find the abundant life in the context of marriage. I think a lot of us think, oh, well, marriage is about my happiness. Well, I mean, it is. That's certainly a benefit of it. But marriage was given to us purposely by our Creator to remind us of the love that he has for us. And there's a great book. We always talk about this book. We read it very early on. It is Sacred Marriage by Gary Thomas. If you go pick up one book, definitely go pick up Dr. Ortland's book for sure. But this is the book I would commend to all of y'all, whatever season you're in, dating, engaged, or marriage, because there are just incredible truths in there that he pulls out from Scripture, and he just continually reminds you that marriage is actually not about you. It is about Jesus. And that is ultimately, that's the secret of our lives as believers. We should be following him in all that we do, and how much more so in marriage that he gave to us as a gift.
Yeah, and I would add to that, you can do the right thing in the wrong way, and it's still not the right thing. Meaning this, integrity matters. Your character matters. The way that you pursue, the way that you allow someone to pursue you matters. Don't look at the end result and forget the journey to it. It matters. And so whatever season you are in tonight, there is no season in which sexual integrity matters less. There's no season in which sexual integrity matters more. There's no season in which your word, your yes be yes and your no be no, matters more or less. Be a man of your word. Be a woman of your word. Pursue somebody or be pursued, whichever category you are in. And remember, we are called to love that person. They might be the object of your scorn, right? You might never want to see their face again. But they are a beloved of God himself. And you are too. And so no matter where you are tonight, remember that you are worth it. And they are. And so run that race that God has called for you well. And I promise you, friend, 10 trillion times 10 trillion years, when we will meet the Lord at the marriage supper of the Lamb, we will meet our true beloved face to face. And it is then that we will be wholly known and wholly loved forever. So, friends, thank you for being here tonight. I hope that this was helpful. At a minimum, I hope that this sparked discussion and sparks conversation afterwards. It is 8 o'clock, and so we're going to do this. Before you leave tonight, tell somebody in this room, man, this is what blessed me. This is what made me think a little bit more. So tell somebody, kind of do an active recall on that. But let's do this. Let's thank our amazing panelists for giving their time tonight. These really are some special people and are really just incredible pillars of our church. And so we're grateful for you guys tonight. So if y'all have any questions or any kind of additional clarification around something that you heard tonight, I do know that the Leatherwoods have got to get home, and honestly, Joy's got to get home because my mom is watching my son who currently has a fever. So just if you need to ask them a question, man, do that. And
Find us online.
Yeah.
We're on the socials.
Okay, that's fair. Okay,
Yeah.
All right, tell somebody what you learned tonight, and we will see you soon. Hey, our next young professional event is a hiking day on, Kiefer, remind me of the date.
March 26th.
Saturday, March 26th. We are doing the Fiery Gizzard Trail Loop, and it's going to be amazing. It's about an hour and a half away. You need to be here, okay? We love y'all, and good night. Bye, y'all.